I'm Alan Noonan and I'm joined with Noel Byrne, and tonight we're leading off with the story of Lance Armstrong's confession over doping during his Tour de France wins. So Noel, what do you think about this Oprah interview?
Yeah, I was expecting a lot more from this interview, to be honest. I mean, it was meant to be a truly open interview. I was expecting, I suppose, a lot of reasons from Armstrong as to why he done what he did. But to me, I don't think Oprah pushed him enough. I didn't feel like he was up against the wall enough. You know, I was expecting him to be, I would say close to tears, I suppose, but I just feel like he wasn't confronted enough on the various issues, and he kind of came across as not that remorseful throughout.
Yeah, exactly, Noel. I mean, they led off the interview saying that this would be a no-holds-barred interview, and yet throughout the interview in particular topics, Lance seemed to give a sort of response that was obfuscation more than anything else. He kind of dodged a few difficult questions, particularly ones relating to Betsy Andrew, a woman who he was in court over cases where she claimed that he stated that he was doping. He denied this, and in the case, it turns out that now she's justified that he actually has admitted to the doping, but he made her life pretty much hell afterwards. In her words, she said, "This is a guy who used to be my friend, who decimated me. He could have come clean. He owes it to me. He owes it to the sport he destroyed." Other people have come out as well saying that Mike Anderson, his old personal assistant, said that he was witness to Lance Armstrong's cruelty to people who claimed that he was doping in the past. He said, "Those of us who called him out were destroyed." Now, Lance Armstrong had called Betsy Andrew a crazy bitch.
Yeah, this part of the interview was kind of interesting because in it, he acknowledged that he called her a crazy bitch, but then he was quick to, to say that he didn't call her fat. And he seemed to think it was an important aspect of the interview that he needed to clarify he didn't call her fat. I mean, what was going through his head where he thought that was the key part of this?
To be honest, I think that he was just dodging another part of the question, because the lead on to that is, do you accept responsibility for other people that hounded her? So, for example, Armstrong's representative left messages on her voice machine, such as, "I hope somebody breaks a baseball bat over your head." And like, these are not timid sort of intimidation. This is full-on bullying, harassment, and this has been done throughout Lance's career. Yet, throughout this interview, he never apologised to these people for his intimidation, for his bullying. I find it a half-hearted confession at best.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people were expecting a lot more from him. Another interesting aspect of the interview is that, he said the entire thing was one big lie and it was just repeated again and again. But he also said he didn't feel like he was cheating because everyone was doing it. I mean, the logic there is extremely flawed, and he didn't really seem to acknowledge that either.
Exactly. That just seems to me to be another part of a cop-out, of a larger cop-out, dare I say.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. But leading on to the next story.
Yes, and the inquest in Galway took place today into the death of Savita Halappanavar, who died in October on the 28th, and it turned out that she was 17 weeks pregnant at the time. Galway West Coroner Dr. Kieran McLaughlin said he hopes that the inquest will be independent, prompt and effective, and that the truth will emerge. It was revealed as well today that 48 statements have already been taken, and there's a further 8 yet to be taken. Galway County Council, interestingly enough, have agreed to the excess funding to be like they will give the money over when needed to fund expert witnesses. And it has been confirmed as well that the case will, resume in Galway on the 8th of April. The coroner as well, he acknowledged the cooperation of Savita Halappanavar's husband and also the Gardaí and HSC. So at least it's a positive thing that everyone is being involved. But I kind of do question, what are we going to get out of this? Now, obviously the inquest has to be done, but is it a question of, the finger of blame is going to be pointed at legislation and not, we'll say, staff at the hospital, if it turns out that it is kind of the fault of the staff that we're on. But I feel like legislation is going to be blamed because it'll kind of be an easier thing for the inquest to find.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Noel. And it seems to me that the protests now that are planned for Saturday evening by both sides, initially they were for the pro-life side, and then later pro-choice demonstrators also said that they were going to hold another protest. It seems like either side are going to try and use whatever points they can from this inquest to sort of clobber the other side and try and get what they want through legislation. But at least it seems to me that the medical community and that the government are approaching this very carefully. They're approaching it very intentionally, and it seems to me from the responses that have been given at the Oireachtas committee that the medical community feel like they have all the tools at their disposal to be able to save a mother's life if it needed. And that was the real danger at first, that the legislation was blocking it. You made an interesting point there when we were speaking earlier on, that possibly it was the prejudices.
Yes, I have a concern as well that maybe, and I suppose it's been reported in the media a lot as well, is that, is it a case of doctors and staff, you know, they're either on one side of this argument, they're either pro-choice or pro-life, and in this case, you know, was it a case of the doctors being a bit more pro-life and that's why they were hesitant to carry out the procedure? I presume in the inquest this will come to light if it was the case.
Exactly. I suppose we have to wait and see, but I think in the cases where it will result where there is difficulty or some sort of conflict of interest between the people in the medical profession and the patients, I think that in the future you're probably going to see medical professions who are going to have some sort of personal conflict renege themselves from cases much more clearly than what happened, because what you seem to have happened in this case was delay, and that led to the disaster rather than legislation being the major problem.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting inquest to keep track of when it kicks off again in April, as said, on the 8th. But moving on, we're still in Ireland and we have news of weather.
Yeah, we're going to stick with Ireland. So we've got snow coming. So the north and apparently Dublin have already seen some snowfall today. They can expect up to 4 inches in some areas of Ireland. We're also told that there will be gale force winds, heavy rains, flooding, sleet and plunging temperatures, with most people laughing and saying, well, that's Ireland for you. Flights are cancelled as airports in the UK are winding down operations because of heavy snowfall there. But it seems like the mild winter is about to end in certain parts of the country now.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's happened a few times with Ireland getting odd, we'll say, weather at this time of the year. Like it was a couple of years ago we got snow in, was it late February, early March?
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah. Something else that was of interest in the country today is Monaghon may be sitting on a gold mine, quite literally. Metallurgical tests at a site in Clontibbert have shown that gold flotation recoveries are at 90%, which is actually much higher than previously expected. It's now thought that there could be up to 70 million euros worth there, not 54 million as previously thought. Goldfields, who carried out the tests, also said there was lower sulphur content in the concentrate, which means there will be lower operation costs as well. Yeah. So the shareholders there are going to be delighted with that news, both bits there. Absolutely,
and that's good environmental news as well with the lower sulphur content. But we're moving on then to abroad.
Yes, abroad and to Algeria, and it's been another crazy day in terms of the reports emerging from Algeria in relation to the hostage crisis at the gas plant, because much like yesterday there's a lot of conflicting reports and it's hard to know what exactly is going on, but it is now thought that there's around 60 hostages still inside the gas plant. But again, it's kind of hard to pin down what exactly is the situation with those hostages, whether they're alive or not, because some reports are saying that the Al-Qaeda militants who took them hostage are now holding them at gunpoint, while other reports are kind of indicating that they are in refuge somewhere in the gas plant and are afraid to emerge themselves because they're not sure what exactly has unfolded. And then there are other reports saying that some of them may also be dead. But as I said, it's difficult to verify what exactly is happening because there's so many conflicting reports.
Exactly. There's a lot of confusion about this story at the moment. But what's interesting, I suppose, is the number of foreign leaders who are becoming more and more involved. So the Prime Minister of Japan cancelled a tour around Asia, his first foreign visit since the new elections in Japan. But that was primarily because of Japanese nationals involved in this incident. There's probably more than a dozen, they were saying, Japanese nationals. But Prime Minister Cameron as well is also very concerned, although the number of British nationals involved now seems to be
The British Prime Minister David Cameron has come out and said that he is... yesterday he said he was expecting further bad news, but today it turns out that the amount of British casualties has been significantly reduced, so it's not as bad as they originally thought. Again, this goes back to the varying reports that are emerging from Algeria as to what exactly is the situation there. But it also has been confirmed that Algerian troops are seeking a peaceful outcome to this situation. So I suppose everyone's kind of hoping for it to be wrapped up, you know, today hopefully, and that they can actually get to the bottom of, you know, how it happened, why it happened, and what exactly was the situation throughout the couple of days.
But it does seem a bit premature that news media have reported this as a botched rescue operation. We simply don't know exactly what has happened, what has transpired. The only definite sort of news that we have is that Algeria is obviously still very reluctant to share information with former colonial powers such as France and Britain with regards to its own internal security apparatus. So we'll see what's happening down the line with this news story as it develops. Moving on to Syria, and we have news from Tuesday that was leaking out about a massacre north of Homs, which was the capital of the revolution, you might remember, where 106 men, women and children have been killed. The pro-government news media reported that the military conflicted with, or had a conflict with gunmen, which is the code word that they use for rebels and insurgents. However, locals report that the forces were the military and that they just engaged in massacring people. This is largely an area where refugees from Homs have fled to since there was fighting in Homs. And she reported that they came in and slaughtered the women and children, they burned the bodies. Now, of particular interest is also the spat that's going on between Russia and the US, where there was 2 bombings in an Aleppo campus, and the US has blamed the government, Russia is blaming the rebels, and Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, came back and said of the US accusations that the government were responsible for these bombings. He said that, "I cannot imagine anything more blasphemous." This from a government who are supporting the regime responsible for several massacres already within the country of Syria. And you have further news on
Aleppo
another.
seemed to be the centre of things this week because a rocket crashed into a building were the reports emerging from Syria today. And again, the pro-government media were saying that it was the rebels that, had caused this accident. But the rebels, of course, were blaming the government. So it's hard to know who actually caused this incident. It couldn't be confirmed whether or not there were any casualties, but medics and pedestrians were seen pulling bodies out from the rubble. But again, it's actually not known if they were still alive or they were dead. So it's a strange one, much like Algeria, I suppose, to a point in terms of the reports, because foreign media isn't allowed in, so you're only getting bits and pieces, and it's hard to confirm anything.
Yeah, even the news of the amount of casualties, the number dead in Syria from the revolution so far is between 45 and 60,000, which gives you some indication of how much confusion is going on in the country at the moment.
Coming closer to home, though, and Minister for Social Protection Joan Burton today announced that there are to be an additional 2,000 places on the Community Employment Programme, which will bring it to just over 25,000 for 2013. The aim, of course, is so that job seekers can go out and kind of improve their skills, maybe get a college placement off the back of it as well, or at least further educational training. The purpose of the Community Employment Programmes is that people could find part-time work in the local communities, while at the same time they'd actually be able to source other part-time work for themselves if they can, so they can earn additional money while at the same time improving their skills and I suppose making them more attractive to the labour market. Joan Burton said that it is of immense benefit to the local communities as well. The priority is going to be given to services at the moment that offer childcare, social and healthcare services, so they'll be given priority in terms of taking people in and filling those places. Also, priority will be given to people who are partaking in the drug rehabilitation services, as it's seen as part of the whole process for them to get involved as well. That will bring a total of 1 billion is being spent by the government in terms of getting job seekers back to work. I suppose some people would ask questions, and I would too. Is this money? Is it being used correctly? Is too much money being pumped in, or is it a waste of time, or is it worth it all?
This government are extremely adept at using news stories and media for a positive story for a week, whereas you see them giving with one hand and taking away with the other. So they're slashing social benefits in the budget, and yet they're proposing these new measures that are so generous. So are they not benevolent to be giving us these employment opportunities, which while they're hurting in other ways? I don't know. What do you think, Noel? Do you think that this is just another media announcement?
I think it is. They seem to be doing a lot. I suppose it comes on the back of the cabinet meeting earlier this week in terms of they need to find ways to boost jobs, and then this announcement was made as well. I mean, the money was pinpointed in budget 2013, so they have known about it for a month, 6 weeks, and now they decide to announce it. So I think it's a case of, they use the media quite wisely, as you said, and I think it is. It's just merely an announcement to make the government look good.
That's a great point, Noel.
Propaganda, if you will.
Exactly. And I couldn't stop laughing when I heard about the cabinet meeting, which was announcing that they were going to publish jobs bill, action plan for jobs.
Yeah.
Excuse me, that was it. Action plan for jobs 2030 next month. Another month before they actually get around to doing anything. So it must be nice to be taking their time up there, up in Dublin. So
Exactly, yeah. Moving on, though, on our final story this evening is a bit of a quirky one, and it could only happen in America. A court case has ended whereby Ira Isaacs, who's a self-described shock artist, he's been jailed for 4 years for shocking people too much. He is a producer of porn films, and it turned out that he produced films including Two Girls, One Cup, as well as other films involving men and women in sexual acts with animals. Unfortunately for the jury, they had to sit through 2 hours worth of footage of women doing things with human excrement, as well as a 90-minute film involving men and women interacting with animals, to put it lightly. In that same film, women were painted as cows. So they had to sit through all that. So I think after watching that much footage, the jury were only going to go one way. But prosecutors had actually tried 3 times to get this guy jailed. But they've finally done it.
Finally managed to do it. I suppose you might as well make lemonade if you're having a lemon party. I feel that this is probably a good thing, but I don't see how other people who are intent on making these sort of movies aren't just going to go to another country out of jurisdiction and make these movies regardless.
Yeah, well, a group called Morality in the Media, welcomed the move and said it was kind of a warning to the porn industry to kind of, they need to be careful of what they're producing. But I suppose on the flip side, they're producing it, so they're obviously, they're of the belief that there is a market there, and people did watch this type of thing. So, it kind of put a question mark over what type of taste people have out there in 21st century.
Yep.
Yeah.
People are strange.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but we'll leave it there. And thanks a million for watching FeckTv News.